Can you imagine what kind of rush you'd get diving off the equivalent of a 9-story building into 12 feet of water? I can think of easier ways to get a rush. Oh, like this glass here in front of me. This is the makings for a Michelada. It's a salt-crusted glass with some ice and lime juice in there. You pour in your favorite beer, and if you really want to kick it up a notch, if you want to make it really thrilling, then make a Michelada Cubana. That's what they call when you add jugo magi. This is seasoning that they have here in Mexico. A little Worcestershire sauce. And now the real ringer, hot sauce. Add as much of your favorite one as you like. Seems like all the tables here in Acapulco have good old hot sauce. Then pour in the beer. Stir it up. And you're in for a treat. That's a way to turn a glass of beer into something pretty thrilling. When it comes to that spicy thrill, isn't this the place that it all begins? Right here in the middle of a chili field in Mexico? Right in the middle of the chili itself? Now, you may have seen this before, but let me just go through a little chili anatomy lesson, a little review perhaps, and let's talk about where that hot stuff resides. Now, right in the middle of this chili, there's a seed pod and then a vein that continues all around down there. That's where you find the concentration of capsaicin, of the really hot stuff, the really thrilling stuff. Now, there's a lot of people that don't understand chilies at all. And unfortunately, some of them are experts. And they give some explanations of why people would eat chilies. I mean, one of them that I've read, get this, says, oh, those poor people that live in countries where they eat so many chilies, they do it because they have such bland, starchy, mealy diets, and they have to eat chilies to get some relief from the monotony. And there's other people that say, oh, no one would really eat chilies, but there's peer pressure to eat them. I think there's two reasons that we eat chilies. One is we've missed out on one of the flavors in the world. We always talk about salty and sweet and acid and bitter, but there's another one, and it's pungency. We love pungent flavors. Just think about salty flavors or tangy flavors for a second. You like that punch of salt you get on the rim of a margarita glass or in a pretzel. You might like the intense tanginess of a really good lemon meringue pie. Well, some of us like the intense spiciness of a very pungent dish. When I opened Frontera Grill back in 1987, serving real Mexican food, I can't tell you how many people said to me, Americans just don't like spicy food. You're in for a lot of trouble. Like, we Americans had absolutely no appreciation for that thrill, that rush, those great flavors that you can get out of chilies. It was like we were stuck in the 1950s or something. Well, obviously, they were wrong. I mean, it didn't take any time at all before we had lines out the door and the people were asking, what's the spiciest dish you've got on the menu? I guess we woke up to the potential of that little chili pot. There's another reason I think we like to eat chilies, and that's because it just speeds up everything in our bodies. It makes us feel really good. And that, of course, leads to some good health benefits. Been hearing lately about how if you eat chilies, it's good for your health. Everything from circulatory problems to arthritis. Looks like these chile de árbol are just about ready for harvesting. We'll be seeing these in the market pretty soon. Now, all the chilies in that field would either be picked green or red, and the green ones would be sold in a big market like this. A few of the red ones would show up here too, but most of the red ones would be destined for drying, and boy, this place is dried chili central. So when it goes to be dried, it's not done in a market like this. There's really two places it'll be dried. One's just like out in the open air. They'll put them on screens. Very simple process, right under the sun. Usually turns out chilies that are a little dirty, or let me see if I can find one. Oh, here's one. If you get one that's got some dust on it, just wipe it off. There's pros and cons to the air drying versus the other thing, which is putting them through a dehydrator. They turn out really clean, but oftentimes there's a little loss in flavor. So you take your choices with that. Now, let's go back to square one. You ready for Chili 101 here? The green ones come off the plant, and they've got this bright green flavor. It comes from the chlorophyll. But if you leave them on the plant long enough, well, they'll turn red, and the chlorophyll becomes beta carotene, and that's real sweet. And then you can pick them off and dry them, and when you dry them, well, the flavor just really intensifies. Just think about like dried tomatoes if you want to, because they taste very different than a fresh tomato. Or think about grapes. You dry them and what do they become? Raisins. Completely different flavor. Well, that's what you got in all these different kinds of chilies too. Let me tell you, drying is totally low-tech, super easy. All you have to do is find a screen or something that'll allow some air circulation. Put this old screen up on bricks here, and then you just lay the chilies out there and let them dry out in the sun, or if it's going to rain, or if it's super humid, then take them inside and let them dry inside. Now this is those chile de árbol. You can see how when we pick them, they just dry up like this. Take about, I don't know, a couple weeks or so for them to be completely dry. If you're worried that it's gonna frost and you wanna pick all of your chilies, go ahead and pick them green, because they'll go ahead and ripen to the red. You usually wanna pick them red off of the plant. These are the poblanos drying to the anchos. And this is this kind of cool one over here. These are the chalaca chilies, and they don't lose their chlorophyll when they ripen, so they never turn completely red. They turn brown instead, and then they dry to the pasilla, which is black. Then just put them into a plastic bag and store them in a cool, dark, dry place, and they'll last for a year or so. But there's another really important point here too, and that's the difference in size. Now they all have different flavors, the big ones and the small ones. Everyone's different than the next, but there's a difference in heat. So look at all these big things. Here we've got the big ancho chilies and these guajillo chilies and mulatos. They're all gonna be, well, not terribly hot at all. In fact, they are used more like we would think about tomatoes being used to make a sauce. These make up the bulk of the sauce. So for stews and soups and so forth, you'll find these all ground up and they'll become the background flavor. But if you're going to make a little salsa or perhaps a hot sauce, well, you look at these kind that are down here. These are the hot dried chilies. There's a lot of different variety. These are the arbols, and they're really hot, make great hot sauce. And then there's some little japoneses down here on the corner. Look at these, even hotter than the arbol. These things are great when you make them into a hot sauce. So what's the difference between a hot sauce and a salsa? Well, I think the big difference is what we see right here. I mean, the hot sauces are all in bottles. They're made to be preserved. They got a good amount of vinegar and a good amount of salt in them, and they can stay in that bottle in your refrigerator for months on end. Now, salsas are a different category. Usually they're made up fresh. Usually they've got bright flavors, bright fresh herbs, chopped fresh onions in them, maybe some green chilies or some dried chilies to give it that pizzazz. So they're closely related, but when you're looking at hot sauces, it's not just one thing. I mean, it's a big category of lots of different flavors. I mean, like this buffalo here. Here's another version of it in a big bottle. I think these sesame seeds are just about toasted. Boy, don't you just love that smell of toasting sesame seeds? But who would think about sesame seeds in a hot sauce, or these toasted pumpkin seeds either for that matter? But this is my very favorite hot sauce to make. The seeds add richness and a real toasty flavor. I use the chile de árbol that I was showing you there just a minute ago. They're pretty easy to clean. You just break off the stem, kind of roll them between your fingers like that. You can break them open and the seeds will pretty much just come right out. I don't get too meticulous about it. Add all of those. I'm making a big batch here, and you can see I'm making it in my super duper industrial blender. I could make it in my little kind of home model too. But this thing, it gives you this incredible texture in it. I'm gonna add the toasted sesame seeds, and now those pumpkin seeds. I'm gonna add some garlic to it. 5 big cloves of garlic, and now this makes it really interesting. Look at this. Cumin, allspice, cloves, Mexican oregano, just freshly ground. All of that'll go in. Now, when you're making hot sauce, of course, it's a preserved thing. You can keep it around for a really long time once it's made. So vinegar is really the base. That's the thing that preserves it. So I'm adding a whole bottle. I told you I was making a lot of hot sauce here. Got a little bit of water that's gonna go into it. And then another thing that preserves it, that's salt. And you add a fair amount of salt. Think about hot sauce. It perks up all the flavors because, yeah, there's a fair amount of salt in that. Put that top on. Then we're gonna blend it until it's super smooth. And of course, with a high-powered blender like this, that doesn't take too long. Then strain it, and of course, if it's really well blended, you're not gonna get a whole lot of chili skin or hull from the sesame out of it. And then funnel it into bottles, and it's ready to store in your refrigerator for, well, months if it lasts that long. Now those are red chili ones. Then there's a green chili one with the jalapeno. Then down here we've got the habanero chili forming the backbone of this one. So just like when we have salsas, we've got lots of different flavors that can go into them. The flavors of the chilies, whether they're made with tomatoes or tomatillos. The same thing happens in the hot sauce category. Lots of different flavors to choose from. They call them hot sauces, but they're really not just about hot. They're about flavor. I mean, when I have a great piece of steak, I like to pair it with the good red wine. I mean, the flavors just go together so well. But you know what? Salsa goes well when you pair it with certain food. I mean, certain salsas have flavors that just go beautifully with other ones. Oh, look at this one. This is the classic beachside Acapulco ceviche, lime marinated fish. And they always doctor it up with a little bit of ketchup. So you could kind of go either way. You could go green, you could go red. Very popular salsa in Mexico. Red has a sweetness to it. And some richness too. I don't know, let me try it. Good. No better than it would be with the green, though. These are all about bright, robust flavors that they're condiments. They're to jazz up the food. Sometimes, you know, I'm just in the mood for something a little more slow simmer, a little richer. I think I've got an idea. Señora, por favor, voy a querer una orden de camarones a la Diabla. Claro que sí. Sí. I just ordered this dish called camarones a la Diabla, shrimp, deviled shrimp, devilish shrimp. You know, it's such a popular dish here in Acapulco that you can find it, well, every place from the best restaurants to a little simple marketplace fonda, little eating place right in the market. It's a great dish for Acapulco because it's hot here. And you know, when you eat hot food, it just, well, it makes you perspire, cools you off. It's a dish that starts off by putting a little oil and butter into a skillet and putting in fresh shrimp. They have the best fresh shrimp here. Put it in peel on, the head's still in place. Saute it when it's about half done. put in some thin sliced rings of onion. Then when those are crispy tender, they add this wonderful sauce to it. Made from guajillo chilies, one of the dried red chilies, arbol chilies, onions, garlic, herbs, spices, and a good dash of red hot sauce. Guajillo chilies are really the heart of that sauce for a la Diabla. You know, they're the smooth-skinned ones. They're really easy to handle. You just break off the top and then tear them open. All the seeds will just pretty much fall right out. Then they get toasted on a medium heat griddle. Just lay them right on, press them down with a spatula. It'll just take about 10 or 15 seconds for them to change color slightly, and you may even see a little wisp of smoke. And all of the chilies get collected together after they're toasted. I threw in a few arbol chilies that were toasted also. Then cover those toasted chilies with hot tap water. Let them soak for about 30 minutes to rehydrate completely. Then drain off all the liquid and put them into a blender jar. Then into the blender, a slice of white onion, some cloves of roasted garlic. I just put them on the back of the griddle while I was doing the toasting of the chilies. And after about 15 minutes or so, they're completely soft in their papery skins. You can just slip them right out and add them to the blender. I'm going to add some spices. This is the triumvirate of spices: cumin, black pepper, and Mexican oregano. I've ground them in my Mexican mortar and brush them right in with all of those chilies, garlic, onions. A little bit of water goes in there just to facilitate the blender. And we'll turn it on. Once it's really smooth, then press it through a medium mesh sieve to catch any stray bits of skin. Then cook it, well, really fry it in a pan over about medium-high heat, filmed with a little bit of oil. Cook it till it's the consistency of tomato paste. Then add some broth or some water to it. Let it simmer about 20 minutes for all those flavors to come together. Season it with a little bit of salt. Then you can add any hot sauce you want. Since I've got that great homemade arbol hot sauce, that's the one that I'm gonna add to it. And you can add as much or as little as you like. Wow, that's a dish. Not even a very hard dish to make. It may be one of the hottest dishes that they make here in Mexico. Maybe. But I don't think it's the ultimate chili thrill. I remember having this really thrilling dish a few years ago. And this little open-air place way out in the country was really a spicy dish. At least I think it was really spicy. Maybe it was just the conversation that was so spicy that night, but I know the dish was just incredible. So we've headed up from the market down in Acapulco, about an hour north of Coyuca, to Doña Polita's, to taste her world-famous pescado a la talla. Fish done to perfection. I mean, that's its name. It's a pretty simple dish. It's just an opened fish, cut right in half so that it opens out, two sides, and then it's bathed with this simple adobo, they call it, simple sauce of chile guajillo and garlic, little salt. Onions go on, a little bit more adobo. It gets wrapped in foil, and then it's cooked over coconut shells. It's a rustic preparation. Comes garnished with tomatoes and avocados. And this is it. It's the ultimate thrill seeker's thrill. But you know what? It's really not all that hot. But it's perfect. It's perfect because Well, they just pull the fish right out of this river here. They made that sauce with love. They cooked it over this rustic fire, over the coconut shells, and then they served it in this idyllic setting, this perfect setting. On the other hand, every now and again, there's nothing wrong with a little adrenaline rush.